Welcome to the class, everybody. As you heard in the promo video, we're going to learn a lot about real estate. We're going to learn all the different ways there are to make money in real estate. That includes flipping houses, renting them, financing, buying liens on the houses. There are so many ways to make money in real estate. There are so many strategies. You can be really creative. And I've tried pretty much all of them. And so this course is going to be me telling you guys what works and what doesn't work in my experience. If you've taken my other course, Learn the Secrets of Probate Real Estate Investing, you know that I've got a lot of experience flipping houses, but I've also dabbled in some of these other strategies and used others very extensively. So I'm going to tell you guys what I know, what I don't know, and what works. And a lot of it is really the philosophy behind real estate and the philosophy behind the financing of real estate that helps us to understand why it's so powerful, how to do it, and many different things that make it understandable for all of us. Everybody can make money in real estate. You don't have to be a genius. All of us are familiar with housing. Most of us are familiar or have mortgages and stuff like that. So real estate is a really logical place to begin building wealth for most people, especially if you don't have a business degree and you haven't spent a lot of time in business or in finance. Well, real estate is understandable and can be done and pretty much understood by anybody. It can be implemented by anybody. So we're going to go ahead and look at a few of the things we need to look at and the basics of understanding real estate. So the first thing we need to do is look at why real estate continues to be the best wealth building strategy there is and always will be. Real estate has been making people wealthy for hundreds, if not thousands of years, literally. And there are some fundamental reasons for why real estate is such a good investment compared to things like stocks or gold or other business deals that you can do and other types of financial instruments. Real estate has some big advantages over a lot of those things. One of them is that it can be leveraged. Banks will lend you money for real estate because they know that if you don't pay back the loan, they can take the property, and homes and land will always have value. And it's a really easy thing for banks to measure. It's really easy for us to borrow because of that. I mean, the banks are not going to lend you money on most other types of assets, or they may on some of them, but they'll be much more strict with the collateral, with the paperwork, and the deal you will get won't be as good. This is a huge advantage because it means that as long as you have a down payment and a decent credit score, which, you know, in most cases your credit score doesn't need to be that high to mortgage property, you can invest, and you can invest in multiple properties, and you can leverage your wealth and basically turbocharge your portfolio. You can borrow on stocks, you know, on the margin and do some fancy stuff there and use debt to buy stocks, but it's way riskier, it's way trickier, and it's a lot harder to do. Real estate is much more straightforward, at least in most cases. The 30-year mortgage, this is an innovation that's only been around for a few decades, actually. We're all pretty used to it now, but the 30-year mortgage allows the consumer to purchase way more real estate than you ever would have been able to before the 30-year mortgage, right? Because it lowers your payment. And even though over time you're paying a lot of interest over 30 years, you are controlling a property that is appreciating, and your money is going a long way because you can get a mortgage on multiple properties. As long as you have the income to show it and rental income counts, you can leverage that to make a lot of money. So that's a big deal. That's one of the big reasons why real estate has become an even better investment than it used to be, or at least easier to get into it with these 30-year mortgages. And there are many ways to finance, refinance, and be creative in real estate, right? If your equity goes up because your property has appreciated over a short period of time, you can refinance that house and pull cash out of that equity and buy another property. This is an amazing thing that you can't do with a lot of other assets. And you can refinance when interest rates change. You get a better interest rate. You can pull money out, as I said. You can do all kinds of creative things with that. You can get into more different kinds of properties. You can subdivide properties up. And there's tons of ways to be creative and to make money. And once you've done a few deals, you realize it's not that complicated. I mean, at first it can be daunting because there's paperwork and it might be confusing, or it might just be scary because if you haven't done it, it seems like maybe it's risky, or, you know, having debt and carrying debt is something you're not used to. But once you've done a deal or two, and most people, own a house to live in, you start to realize that it's not that big of a deal. You start doing it and it works, and then you just keep doing it. You get more confident, you learn more, and you just start building it. You just really got to start. And I know that my first deal, the first time I flipped a house, it was scary. You are risking your own money. It's something new. You're worried you're going to make a mistake. You're worried that maybe you're going to get taken advantage of by somebody. There's all these moving parts. And then you go through the process and you go, well, that was challenging. And I mean, usually it is at first. You start to realize that you've gotten better at it. You've learned. The next time it'll be easier. And you made some money. And you really just got to get started. So those are some of the reasons that real estate is a great investment. Some more reasons is that there will always be demand for real estate. Under no market conditions do people not need a place to live, right? So even if the value of homes goes down, such as we saw with the crash, the bubble in 2008 popping, everyone still has to rent someplace. So rents might go down and the values might go down, but real estate will always be necessary. There will always be demand for it, okay? This makes it unique, I mean, people don't need stocks to live, but people need a place to live. There will never be a time and there will never be a scenario where people don't need housing. And so that makes it very, very safe in the long term. Now, of course, if you're over leveraged and you have 10 properties that are all hanging by a thread, that you have to have tenants in all of them, in order to just barely keep it all together, and then the market crashes, you're upside down in all of them, that's how people lose all their money and they lose their shirts. So you have to be careful with leverage, and we're going to talk about that in this course. But in general, it's a unique investment because people always need housing. And the reason I've written here that demand will increase over time, over the decades, the population of the planet is exploding. It's going to double every, decade or so. So you're talking about having billions and billions more people on Earth, but the land is fixed. You cannot create more land. And this is something that most people probably haven't thought of, but as the population gets huge and it starts exploding, the value of real estate is going to go up exponentially. This is already happening in many countries where land is much more scarce than the US. In the United States, we have lots of land. We've got a really big country and we have really good land. And values are also going up here, of course. But as available properties get more and more scarce, then the values will continue to go up. So that means it's an even better investment. The earlier you can start investing in real estate, the more it'll be worth. And I think, and this is just my belief, but based on the economics I just explained, I believe that in a couple decades from now, land is going to be worth many, many multiples than it is now, and way, way more than it ever has been. It's going to be increasing at a faster rate than it ever has been because we're going to essentially run out of it. And this hasn't quite happened yet. So investing in real estate is going to be even more valuable, and there's going to be even more demand for it than there ever has been in history as we move toward the future. Real estate also has the attribute of being able to protect your wealth during even the worst financial disasters. I mean, even if the value of real estate goes to almost nothing, or it loses half its value, as we saw in 2008, you still own something that can be lived in, it can be used, it can be rented. Right? If you need to hold on to your property, you can live inside of it. It actually has utility, whereas gold doesn't have any real utility, and even money doesn't have a lot of utility if you're in a super hyper inflation environment and you're losing all of your purchasing power, as we've seen happen in history in places like Mexico, in the Old South with Confederate dollars during the Civil War, in Asia during the banking crisis in the 90s. That is also possible. And even though the value of real estate can go down, it can always be lived in, it can be used, land can be farmed, and you can actually create food with it. So this makes real estate inherently valuable in a way that pretty much no other asset is. And that makes it a really good investment, especially over the long run. And then finally, for this introductory lesson, the low end of the market has the highest level of demand. This is great for investors because, most of the people in the marketplace can't afford $1 million houses or whatever. That means that lots and lots of transactions are happening in sort of the lower to middle end for properties that are, $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 or whatever. And this is good for us as investors because everyone's always looking to rent these kind of properties, to buy these kind of properties. As we're flipping houses, whether you're selling it to another investor as a wholesale deal or you're selling it on the market, the demand is really high at this sort of low end to mid end of the market. So there's always lots of activity, there's always lots of buyers, and of course, if you know anything about real estate, it is cyclical. Sometimes it's a buyer's market, sometimes it's a seller's market, but there's always demand for housing at this low end of the market. And if you don't have any capital, you can get started, with mobile homes, or you can get started with just land and learn how to make money that way until you build it up and you start doing bigger deals. But this is another attribute of real estate that is good for us as investors. And so with that, we'll leave it there and we'll go on to another introductory lesson where we'll continue about the fundamental merits of real estate before we get into more of the meat of the course.